Same idea of the second one, except this time you will notice it's not a monic quadratic. Well, it kind of is. It's a negative monic quadratic. We've got a -1 on the outside there. It does work in a very similar way. Essentially, you should hopefully now know how to complete the square on monic quadratics when it's a 1x squared. That's what we did on the first two questions. Whenever you've got anything that's not a monic quadratic, your first step is to make it a monic quadratic. So what I mean by that is we're going to add one extra step in, and we're just going to do some factorising to turn it into a 1x squared. So the reason this one isn't a 1x squared is because it's a -1x squared. So the first thing I'm going to do is factorise that out. So if I factorise a -1 out of the first term, I will get a positive x squared. It now turns into a monic quadratic, which is perfect. The second term, it will turn into a positive 10x. And then you can factorise it out of the end term, the 1 that you've got there, but you don't actually need to. You only need to factorise it out the first two terms, but you can take it out of all three. The reason I don't like to take it out of all three is because sometimes that gives you an annoying fraction or decimal on the end, which just makes it a little bit more complicated to work with. And then same idea as before, we're now going to complete the square on what we have in the bracket. So I just need to halve the 10 that I've got. That's going to give me an x plus 5. And then I square that. And then we said to subtract whatever that number squared is. So that positive 5 squared is 25. So I take that off. But remember what we did. We factorised a -1 out the front. So I actually need to put a big bracket in front of this. You can use a square bracket if you want to, or just another curved one. And then just remember you've got that positive 1 at the end as well. Then from here, all that we need to do is some expansion. So first of all, let's expand this big outer bracket that we've got. So there's a -1 on the outside. I need to multiply it by the bracket that I've got in there. So the -1 is just going to go in front of it. And then the -1 also needs to times the -25. So that would give me a positive 25. So I've expanded that outer bracket. I've just got the original bracket in the middle there. And then remember, we've got that +1 that was right on the end as well. And then we just collect our like terms, the 25 and the 1 on the end. And we've put it in completed the square form. So whenever we have a non-monic quadratic that we are using, you will essentially get some sort of number out the front of the bracket, which isn't a positive one. It might be a -1. It could be something like a -5 or a positive 5, etc., etc. So let's have a look at how that method would work on the next one as well. Again, we first of all notice it's not a monic quadratic, it's a non-monic quadratic, but the first step is to turn it into a monic quadratic because we know how to complete the square when it's like that. So why isn't this a monic quadratic? Well, it's essentially because of the 2 out front. So let's start by factorising that out of the first two terms. Remember what we said, you can factorise it out of the constant, but you don't need to. Second step is to complete the square on what's inside the bracket. So I need to halve the 7 that I've got, which is going to give me 3.5. And then remember to square the bracket. And then remember to subtract whatever that number squared is. So if you've got 3.5 and you square it, that's going to give you 12.25, so we take that off. And then remember that you actually factorised a 2 out at the start, so we need to open up a big bracket around that, put the 2 at the front, and then just remember there was a +4 on the end as well. Next step is to get rid of this big outer bracket, so we need to expand it with the 2 at the front. So that 2 is going to multiply the bracket that we had. The 2 is also going to multiply the -12.25. That's going to give us -24.5. And then just remember that you have the +4 as well. Final step, collect the like terms. So we can't do anything with the first bit. That's already in the form that we want, but we just need to collect the minus 24.5 with the plus 4, and that's going to give us minus 20.5.